when you're thinking about fractions, decimals, and percents, it's everything that we've already started learning. We know a fraction, like 1/4, for example, is 1/4 of a dollar, right? If we got it to a dollar, each quarter's 25 cents, 25 out of 100. We write it how we read it, 25 hundredths, right? If it's 25 out of 100, we have 25%. Percent means per 100. So let's think about some more examples like this. If we're looking at 27%, 27 hundredths, good. And Laylan, what would my decimal be? 0.27. Good. Let's look at 3%. Go ahead, Zach. 3 hundredths, right? 3 out of 100. Percent is always out of 100. So 3 hundredths. Right, excellent. For 4.9%. We don't make this a mixed number because remember, percent is still per 100. Did anybody do it a different way? Not making it a percent, not making it a mixed number? How can we turn 4.9% into a fraction? Remember, percent is always per 100, so we start by writing 4.9 out of 100. But we can't have a decimal inside of a fraction like that. So what do we have to do? We're not going to divide it because we would just have a smaller decimal on the top. How can I get rid of that decimal in there?
Wouldn't it be 4 900ths?
It's not 4 900ths. No, because we don't have 4. This would mean you have 400%. We don't have 400%. We only have 4.9%. So this is why we put it out of 100. Julia? So you have to multiply, right, the top, the numerator and the denominator by 10. Because you can't just magically make that decimal disappear. So now you have 49 thousandths. Everybody make sure you have that example down. 49 thousandths. Now we could write it as a decimal, right? 49 thousandths. And to check, this is a tricky one, to check that it's correct, right? Remember, to go from a decimal back to a percent, we multiply by 100. If I multiplied this by 100, right? Remember the shortcut when you multiply by 100? We can move our decimal to the right 2 places. So look, we're back to 4.9%. So on these, you can check all of your own work here to make sure that you have it correct. If we have negative 18%, don't be thrown off. It's still out of 100. And we would still just have our decimal, right? 18 hundredths. Now this next one, this is what you guys were trying to do with 4.9. This is now more than 100%. So
Just be 1 and 47 over 100.
exactly, this one, 1 and 47 hundredths.
0.47.
Yeah, this one, and you can check it, because remember, if we multiply that by 100, or move that decimal 2 times, we would get 147%. Yeah, 1/5 as a decimal, right? This one we can get to a denominator of 10. So 0.2 or 0.20 is fine. And then remember, to go from a decimal to a percent, we multiply it by 100. And the shortcut for that is to move the decimal to the right 2 places, and you add a 0 in that open spot there. So we get 20%. Good. Okay, let's look at the next. Yep, this would be 65 over 100. We write it just how we read it, and the percent.
0.65.
That's
Oh, that's the decimal.
yeah.
65.
65, right? We multiply it by 100, 65%, good. Okay, 350%, perfect. My fraction would be 3 wholes and 50 over 100, right? Or you could have written as improper, 350 over 100. This will make it easier. And so my decimal would be 3.5. Right? This time we're not simplifying our fractions here, but you will simplify in this unit. Okay, let's take a look at the next one, 9/25. Here, once we got it to a denominator of 100, then we can write it just how we read it and multiply it by 100 to get our percent. Good. Okay, now let's look at this next one, 0.875. Our percent here would be 87.5. Remember, we move that decimal 2 times, right? And just like on your test, sometimes you can have an 87.5. It doesn't have to be a whole number there. Okay, let's take a look at our next one, 48%. Go ahead, Maya. Yeah, this is 48 over 100, 48%. Now this last one was the only one where we had to do what? Divide. So remember, your top friends came on time, put them inside.
I actually put 3.
Yep. When you divide, right, make sure you're putting that decimal up there. Okay, so here we get 75 thousandths. Real tiny amount there. And 75 thousandths as a percent, what would that be?
0.75.
No, remember, multiply by 100, move that
7.5%.
7.5. Move that decimal 2 times. That's an example. Right? Working the other way on that one. Okay. Okay, now we're going to use those percents to problem solve a bit. This is one that we see quite a bit, right? Our test scores. Maya scored a 45 out of 50 on our questions. She would like to know what percent is this. Go ahead, you calculate it and show me when you've got your answer. Out of 50, I like how I see that we got that denominator to 100, just like we do after we take a quiz and we want to find our grade. Maya got an A, a 90% on her test. When we're looking at percents, this is just like in our last test. Remember the Barnes & Noble question with the books were on sale?
Yeah.
This is just written in a different way. So if they're asking for the percent of a number, right? We turn our percent into a decimal. Whenever we see that word of in math, what operation is it? Multiplication. And then we multiply, okay, to get our answer. Let's practice one just like that. So go ahead. I want you to try 25% of 60. Remember, start it off. When you have your 25%, write it as a decimal. We multiply. So you can just go ahead and multiply now.
That one was easier because it's an even number.
This one was easier because it's an even number. Exactly. So I'm going to show you a different method some of you might have used. Let me just put this answer down. Once you multiply, we add our decimal back in. So 25% of 60 is how much? 15. Now I saw like a percent sign written on someone's answer. You don't you're taking a percent of the number, so it's going to be an actual amount, not a percent for your answer. Now, you could also have solved this using fractions. We know, remember at the beginning, 25% was what fraction? Alois, you remember? 25% was? Yeah, 1/4. You could multiply times 60 and put a 1 under it because it's a whole number. And 60 divided by 4 gives you 15. So there's 2 different ways you can solve these questions. If you like working with fractions, and like Laylan said, this fraction was an easy amount, right? We could simplify down to 1/4. You could do it that way. Okay, so this next one, I want to leave a 15% tip. My bill, write this part in, is $26.50. How much money should I leave? So remember, this is the same thing. Anytime you're at a restaurant and you're calculating the tip, you're taking a percent of the total. 15% of $26.50. Yep, go ahead, try it. Once you get your answer, remember, put that decimal back in 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. But remember, this is money. Since this is money, you need to round to the nearest penny. Don't leave your answer written like this. You want to think, is this closer to $3.97 or $3.98? What would it be, my friends? Right. Now also, make sure you have put a $sign in front of your amount. You will lose points on your test if you don't round to the nearest penny and you don't put a $sign. I had friends on the last test who put...
What do you do with the 50? Do you just get rid of the 50?
Well, we rounded it, right? We looked at this digit here to see. But I had friends who put the $sign at the end of a number. That is not where the $sign goes, right? If you have cents, you put that at the end, but $signs go in the front.